Good day, everybody. This is Ying Yang in California with cat hair in her mouth. Ay, ay, ay. I have cats. Uh, that's not the only part of my personality. I love to read books. I love to read books like Henry Morales' The Dirt Merchant's Highwaymen edition, A Triumph, a True Story, a novel, a coming of age adventure. It is a book of very good, solid wisdom. I bring morsels of a thought of wisdom to you. I've done it 1675 days in a row. And I have been doing this because knowing the right thing to do in your life is a form of wisdom, and doing it is virtue. That is something somebody gave us a long time ago in a fortune cookie. I remember the restaurant. I even remember the name of the restaurant, and I remember all kinds of things. Anyway, hopefully that you may receive some wisdom and learn some pitfalls to avoid. Chapter 31, Seeds of Greatness. Seeds of Greatness. Now, we know that Henry Morales' character, main character, Spencer Corrales, has made a record in his industry. American wholesalers selling um, tools and speakers and goods, electronic goods and tools and things that can be used around the house. Tends to be for males, tends to be for men. They have an unspoken tacit policy of men only, and there are women that work there, few, very few, but he had a record of selling however many in one night. I think it was 150 or something in one overnight night, all nighter with his partner, and they did it. And it's never been matched since, even in the industry. And it's because partly people don't do brick and mortar stores now, and they don't sell things out of cars much now, that I can tell. And here we are. Chapter 31, Seeds of Greatness, page 214. Quote, "He won't come out of his room," Spencer's mom said to her only brother in town from San Diego. "He goes out to work, comes back, and just lies in bed and watches TV. He doesn't go out. He is not mean to anyone or nice. He just is. He was so positive and motivated in that company, and he just doesn't work the same way anymore. Something happened, but he won't talk about it. He won't talk to anyone about it." "Let me see if I can find out what's going on," said Joe. Uncle Joe knocked on the door of Spencer's room. "Yeah? It's Joe. Can I come in?" "Yeah." Joe had been a successful real estate broker in San Diego and had a good rapport with Spencer during his success and always cheered him on. "Hey, you want to talk about it?" "Nah, man, there's nothing to talk about. How you doing out in San Diego?" "Good. Just moved into my new condo, headed off to Switzerland. Ski trip." Spencer just listened, staring at a Tom Petty video on MTV. Listen, MTV was big back then. "You spin me right round, baby, right round, baby, right round, baby, baby, do do. You spin me right round, baby, right round, da 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 da." Ay, 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 MTV. Okay, this was in the 80s. "Listen, no one knows what's going on with you, and we know you don't want to talk about it, but if you want to bend my ear, call me. Here's the number at the villa. Call collect." Also, and calling collect means that when you would make a telephone call, you ask the operator would ask the recipient if they would accept the charges. Now, there was also a way to make a third party pay, which was if you wanted to make a long distance charge to Auntie Madeline and you had Uncle Joe pay for it from another location, you could call the operator and say, "I'm going to call Auntie Madeline's number. long distance, but I want to pay it through Uncle Joe in this other city. And then the operator would ask Uncle Joe first, will somebody wants to make a call from there to there, will you accept the charges? And then the person would say yes, and then you could go and speak to Auntie Madeline. Essentially, Uncle Joe would be paying your toll call. So calling collect was a very interesting process back then. Collect meant that the recipient paid the toll. Here's the number at the villa. Call collect. Also, when I get back to San Diego, here's my car phone number. Thanks, Joe, but you know I'm cool. Don't worry about me. He turned back to a Duran Duran video on the big TV and propped up the pillow on his queen-sized bed, both of which were much too big for the tiny room. Sure thing. How can anyone understand the embarrassment, the hurt, the feeling of being hustled, the broken trust, the busted heart? Spencer had made fun of his friends for wasting their time in college and at menial jobs. By the time they got out of college, he would tell them he was going to have 10 million. His father still wasn't talking to him, at least before the silent treatment had its benefits. He had convinced himself that once his father saw him in his new office with his new car, he'd see him as a success and accept him back in his good graces. He was getting none of the benefit and all the loneliness. Every time he started to talk about it with Tara, she would bust chops and say that Kenny, Teddy, Gino, and everyone had been trying to tell him about Jim, but he wouldn't listen. Told you so. Now all you do is sit around watching TV feeling sorry for yourself. Snap out of it. He felt like a loser talking to her, and worse, she was seeing him as such in his mind anyway. Who could understand? The guys from the office would tease him and make fun of him for staying till the end, going down with the ship. No, it was better to be alone, miserable and silent, than to deal with that. I'm the one that busts chops, not the one whose chops get busted. He disconnected his answering machine because he didn't want to hear all the fun his friends were having in college and didn't want them to feel sorry for him when he finally had to fess up and tell them his career was over. No, this is much better. After the incident with Jim, when he wasn't at home watching TV, he'd be at Tara's house, the arcade playing Ms. Pac-Man or Galaga at the Pizza Circus in Hackensack, at the Coach House Diner, Bennigan's or the Ground Round, just killing time. He would never admit that he was waiting for Jim to call, apologize, and get back to work. When that didn't happen, he'd managed to work out a deal with an importer on 30th Street to buy smaller quantities of product just above wholesale. He used the money he was saving up for his own office to buy merchandise and a van of his own to move merch. He began working alone, making about 400 a week, working 3 or 4 days a week, a few hours a day, spending it mostly on dinners with Tara, movies and video games at the arcade. He sometimes went out with Tara's friends, but never with his old friends. We are reading Morsels of a Thought of Wisdom. So you know what to do. So you know what to do and you do it. And when you do it, you create virtue. We create more virtue in the world this way with Morsels of a Thought. And this book tells you so many great gems of wisdom. It is crazy, and also pitfalls to avoid. He sometimes went out with Tara's friends, but never with his old friends. Had they known nothing about had they known nothing about what a colossal failure he was, Tara was kind enough to bust chops only in private. Spencer fell deeper into his depression as the weather became bitterly harsh and he went out to work less and less. He got one of Tara's friends' boyfriends to begin working for him so he wouldn't have to work alone in the fields, but the guy was pretty lousy and all he did was cut into profits. Christmas came and went without much fuss. Spencer's high school friends were home from college on winter break. He wouldn't see them. He asked one favor of his mom and brother, which was to recite this mantra anytime someone would stop by. Oh, he's not in. I will tell him you stopped by. He would watch from his second-story window as they drove away. I used to stand at my window, recall second story, and I saw somebody coming to visit my parents, and they were trying to talk about me. And I looked, and then after he came out, I had the blinds open a little, and then he turned around and looked up at the blinds, and I went like this. So he knew a short person had seen him. It was my uncle, a different uncle. Okay, a couple of days after Christmas, there was a knock on his door. Here, sweetie, your uncle sent you this for Christmas. His mom handed him the box. Never having received anything from his uncle in 18 years of life, he was surprised. He opened the box and it was an educational audio program, The Seeds of Greatness by Dennis Waitley. He instantly remembered some of Jim's guys who were running deals were given these tapes that they could listen to in their car. It didn't make any sense to Spencer at the time. How can listening to a tape have any effect on how much money you made or your success? It was a totally foreign concept. Now, here were some tapes showing up out of the blue. Spencer listened to the tapes over and over every day during the next several weeks to pass the time and spent less and less time with Tara. As he started to absorb the information, he started to get out of his depressed funk. It took several listens, but the message started to make sense. It was more of the same ideas that Jim and the guys preached, but presented in a much more sophisticated way. He was trying to get to the part of the program where they gave him the secret about making money, sales secrets, tips, or techniques, but there was no secret. Waitley was not only wealthy, but also educated, a PhD. He trained Olympic athletes and high power business people. The level of sophistication in the message was foreign to Spencer. The lack of hard driving motivation and hardcore sales techniques made the message hard to comprehend, but it was sinking in. Waitley talked about long term thinking and most of all about education, all about learning as much about what you're doing as you possibly could to get to be the best at it. He talked about being a champion, but doing it in a way that was kind and honest, doing the right thing and telling it to people straight. Strategies that were never given to him at American wholesalers. After listening to the program 22 times, Spencer finally got it. 22 times. He counted them. Mm-hmm. I've listened to tapes a lot. I've read some books a lot, more than as well that many times. The first and most important thing he could do was to make a commitment to use the time with Jim Braun as a learning process and not be bitter or feel sorry for himself anymore. He went back to Teaneck High School to find out about what he needed to do to get his diploma. Shocked but pleased to see him, Vice Principal Delaney and his crew were happy to walk him through the process and order him all the materials to prepare for the test. He reached out to his old high school friends and, one by one, took them to lunch or dinner, always picking up the tab, explaining what had happened with the company and that he was getting his act together and thanking them for their friendship. He realized that he'd essentially stopped his education in the 10th grade and that he was at a remedial reading level, but vowed to apply what he'd learned with Jim Braun to catch up. He knew he wanted to be a successful businessman, teaching and training, setting up offices, and coaching people on how to live a successful life, but he realized that he didn't have a clue where to get started. He did know he was smart enough to be an educated person. He snuck his test prep books up to the attic and worked there under a small lamp so no one would know what he was up to. He felt ashamed that he was taking this quote test for mushheads end quote, as he referred to it. No one could know, so his attitude wouldn't be blown by chop busters. He aced the high school equivalency test. By summer, he was hanging out and partying with his friends again and put all of them to work for him at one time or another, not really to do anything, but mainly to sit in the car and keep him company. Instead of telling him, I told you so, his friends were happy to have him back in their lives and to share stories with him of their adventures at college. March 15th, 1985. Through all his personal drama and depression since his blow up with Jim, Spencer neglected to give any thought to his Chevelle being built in Patterson. Ray was part of the do not disturb policy reluctantly agreed to by his family. Now that the cobwebs were being swept away from his mind like with some massive mental broom, he called Ray to get a status update. After busting chops about Spencer's disappearing act, which the 6 year younger Spencer took like a man, Ray was happy to say that the car was basically done. All that was left was the paint job, bolting on the chrome and emblems, and a balance of $380. They'd agreed that he'd bring the cash when he picked it up on Thursday. Okay, excuse me. Ugh, uh, uh, sorry. Thursday, March 18th. Okay. Before we get to Thursday, this is Morsels of a Thought of Wisdom. I got a really interesting text just this a second ago. 1675 mornings in a row. I have come to you since January 2nd, 2021. I accepted a challenge of 30 days of being online 30 days in a row, and obviously I didn't accept it on the first day. But on January 2nd, I said, I can still do 30 days if I want to try. Okay, just try. And I did. And I'm the only one that kept on going this far, this long, consecutive days. Except for Dr. Vung, him. He's the one that got me started. Um, 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 Dr. Duck C. Vung. DUCCONG VUONG. Okay. Thursday, March 18th. The horn sounded. Anthony was waiting in the driveway in his mom's Chrysler. Spencer peered out from his bedroom window, grabbed his coat, and raced down, jumping down the last 6 stairs. Christmas and birthday gifts all rolled into one. Better late than never. Juice, get fired up. The old pals were reminiscing, joking around, and busting chops as they pulled off of Route 4 and up to Ray's garage. Both jaws dropped. The chrome seemed to shine bright as a searchlight. The paint sparkled like black diamonds. Spencer tossed a wad of 20s in a rubber band to Ray as he and Anthony ran from the Chrysler to the Chevelle. Cherry pie, baby, cherry pie! Spencer screamed. Keys are in it, said Ray with a big grin. The engine purred. The interior was sweeter than black cherry. It was much nicer than he remembered any of the cars in Deer Park, and it was all his. His concept, his specs, his doing with his cash. Yay. June 4th. When he received his high school diploma in the mail, he framed it and brought it over to his father's house. Dr. Corrales smiled at his son for the first time in almost 2 years. Dr. Corrales proceeded to hang his son's high school diploma on the wall in his den with his 13 framed medical degrees and accreditations. Accreditations. The summer was filled with pool parties at his father's house, Jersey Shore trips, and evenings in the city. What I've heard about New Jersey is it's the Garden State, and it's basically the shore. That's a big deal there. I have only been to New Jersey via New York City, so I haven't actually seen New Jersey. New Jersey. Spencer's first day at Bergen Community was one of the most exciting days of his life. He had never looked forward to a first day of school. Even though he and his friends always referred to the school as the 13th grade, reserved for druggies or derelicts that couldn't get into a real college, Being there didn't bother him in the least. He saw it as a necessary next step, but even on his first day, he was committed to getting out of there and move on to a university as fast as possible. He applied what he'd learned in the field about not being intimidated by adults and relating to different kinds of people, and made friends with all his professors at Bergen Community. He explained to them that he would do whatever it took to get A's in their class if they would tell him exactly what was expected of him. Yay, that is exactly the right. They say the single most influential factor in a student's performance in a class is the teacher's expectation of him, or what he thinks the teacher expects of him. That is the single most influential factor. Who told me that? That was in social and ethnic stratification. I took a course. Anyway, anyway, anyway. The professor explained that oh, no, 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 excuse me. Spencer Corellis explained that he was at a remedial reading level, but would make up for it with hard work and his supreme attitude. He made it clear that he knew he had to ace each class if he was to reach his goal of transferring to New York University Business School after only 1 year of community college. Spencer achieved a 4.0 grade point average in his first semester. He brought his grades to his father, who posted them on his refrigerator and continued to encourage his son. He finished his second semester at Bergen Community College with 6 more A's, a perfect 4.0 after 2 semesters. The mandatory health class he took magnified the horrors of smoking through a series of graphic videos. This, in addition to the realization that educated people don't smoke cigarettes, caused him to quit cold turkey. After 5 years of 2 packs a day, he got hooked on lollipops, an easier habit to break. He became an inspiration to many of his friends to go to college or to excel where they were. Upon receiving his second semester grades, Spencer went to visit the admissions board at NYU and made friends with the staff who were anxious to help. They asked why he wanted to be at NYU, and he told them his story, how he had achieved success and how it all fell apart, that he needed the knowledge of a college education to fulfill his dream of becoming an international businessman, setting up offices around the US and the world. He told them that although he had dropped out of high school and was at a remedial reading level when he started at BCC, his professors had helped him to catch up, and he was certain he could handle the workload at NYU and excel. The admissions staff explained that it is not NYU's policy to take first year transfers out of community colleges. They only consider those with 2 year associate's degrees. There has to be a way. One of the staff members suggested summer classes. She explained that there was an excellent summer program at Harvard University with open admissions. She explained that it entailed real Harvard courses and professors, and that he would have no time for anything but school, but if he did well at this summer program, he would be considered for admission to NYU as a transfer student. He proceeded to write a check for 2,402 to Harvard University for calculus and economics classes and 2 months of stay at the Dunster Dormitory on the Charles River in Cambridge, virtually exhausting his March moving savings. So we shall find out what happens next week. And this will be The Dirt Merchants, a novel by Henry Morales, the Highwaymen edition, a novel, a triumph, a true story, a coming of age adventure. Okay, I will talk to you again later. Okay, old Kinderhook.